Namaskar, viewers. On behalf of India Tourism Kolkata office, Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, today we are going to take you to the Toy Story of Ghurni. And with me, today's speaker, Ms. Shreya Sarkar, who is an eminent craft expert of India, and myself, Dr. Saikat Chakraborty, uh, working in the tourism industry and presently in Tripura in the Asian Development Bank project. So I would like to request Shreya that our story about Ghurni is a very colorful story, and over to you, please.
Thank you, Dr. Chakraborty. This, as viewers know, or also for the viewers who are joining in today, this is a continuation of the Toy Story that we started a while back. And we are trying to present the viewers with insights into different traditional toy making processes throughout the span of the Indian subcontinent, mainly the Indian mainland. So, today we would be talking about the lifestyle dolls of Krishnanagar. Now, there is a very conflicting term here. We are terming the whole presentation as toy stories, but we're talking about dolls. So, I'd like to start with a little information about what different differences are there between a toy and a doll. Not much. Toy is something that children or even anybody can play with. Dolls specifically are those categories of toys which have resemblance with human figures. So any toy that looks like a human figure or looks like a human being is generally referred to as dolls. Now, today's session, as you can see on the screen, are about the lifestyle dolls of Krishnanagar. Krishnanagar is in the Nodia district of West Bengal. Now, before we start off with the presentation and the discussion session between Dr. Chakraborty and myself, I'd like to remind the viewers that this is not just a discussion session, and this is also a quiz session. So, as and when we proceed through the presentations, we would be presenting you with some questions and some multiple choice answers. So please write down the correct answers in the chat box with the question number. Otherwise, it becomes a little difficult for us to understand which question you're answering. The first ones to answer correctly would be eligible for a prize. So please bear that in mind, and we will give you a certain amount of time to understand and read the question. Please write down your answers in the given chat box. So let's start. The lifestyle dolls of Krishnanagar in Nodia have a long history, about some 250 years of history. Now, Krishnanagar initially was known as Revi village during, say, about the late 17th century, before Raja Krishna Chandra Rai came and claimed the land as his kingdom or as his abode. It is a very interesting story about how lifestyle dolls have developed in Krishnanagar. Now, before we start going into the history, we'll just explain why we call these the lifestyle dolls. Now, the dolls of Krishnanagar have a very typical trait of expressing daily lives of people in Bengal through, certain activities, certain postures, and certain appearances. Traditionally, Krishnanagar dolls were not designed for playing. These were not meant for children to play with. These were meant for, presenting a visual social narrative of how the society was and what the society was going through in terms of change, in terms of distinctions, in terms of categories, classes, and clan of people. So that is why traditionally, the Krishnanagar dolls are known as the lifestyle dolls. Now, the storytelling part, the main idea of these dolls were to tell stories about the society to different kinds of people all over India or even abroad, since it started during the rule of the East India Company. Now, if we look at the screen here, you'd see before we start going into the history that these are very precisely anatomically correct dolls, and these dolls that you see on screen are actually the towards the beginning of the legacy. So the kind of variety that was portrayed through these dolls are immense. Village scenes, depiction of different religion, different clothes, different styles, different postures, and everything together was meant to portray a certain narrative of the society itself. Now, having said that, we would come to the first question of the session. So, your question is, what is the main characteristic of Krishnanagar dolls? Your answers are on the screen. Please choose the correct answer and write down your answers with the question number so that it makes easier for us to choose you as the winner. We'll continue with the presentation now. Now, the history of why Krishnanagar dolls started being made is very interesting. When Krishna Chandra Rai was a connoisseur of art. So when he came to Krishnanagar and established his kingdom, there was a need for making dolls made out of thickened milk, something that Bengalis called kheer. Kheer all over India is a porridge made of rice and milk, but in Bengal, kheer is condensed milk, super dry and condensed milk. And there is a tradition that dolls are made of kheer and presented and given to people during social ceremonies, be it wedding, be it mundan, equivalent of mundan, or any other such occasions. So there was a requirement for such artists who would actually come and make dolls made out of kheer. And these people were not available around that area. We're talking about undivided Bengal, of course, during that period of time. So, certain potters and toy makers from Nator in Bangladesh were brought into Krishnanagar to continue with this tradition of making kheer dolls. Now, those kheer dolls, as you can see on the screen right now, these dolls are made of that thickened milk. The precision, the accuracy with which these people started making these dolls excited Raja Krishna Chandra. And then after a while, these people, these potters or these doll makers, were taught under the British government by the British teachers. They were given training of building anatomically correct dolls. That was, of course, a Western legacy of the Greek school of sculpture. Now, these figures started developing as a social narrative, and then, of course, different kinds of stories came into being. And before we go into the stories, this is your second question of the session. According to lore, what kind of dolls were the potters from Nator brought in to make? Again, please choose the correct option and write down your answers in the chat box with the question number. Now, while we just spoke about toys, dolls made of kheer, something that Bengalis call khirer putu. Now, another very interesting aspect of Krishnanagar and during the reign of Raja Krishna Chandra Rai was the development of pujas, the Durga pujas, and how the statues or the idols of Durga pujas were made by these potters. Now, on one hand, you see these are lifestyle dolls that are anatomically correct, that were taught to these people. The correct anatomy and the correct drawing of human figures were taught to these people by the British. On the other hand, with the rise of religious understanding and festivities related to religion, another section of artisans grew, who invested themselves into making Durga idols. Before this, Durga idols were in a different form. If anybody from Bengal is watching it, or anybody from all around India, if you have visited Bengal during Durga Pujas, you will see that there are different kinds of Durga idols that are there in the pandals. Some of them have the traditional yellow face with very protruding and big eyes, and some of the dolls are very realistic. They are also very anatomically correct. This legacy of anatomically correct dolls were brought in by these artists of Krishnanagar, a part of whom had migrated to Calcutta and live in the present day Kumartuli, which is a huge idol making hub of Calcutta and all over Bengal. I think if Dr. Chakraborty would actually take up and continue with the discussion
Yes,
of
yes.
what was the
Very
religious importance of this,
true, true.
the
Very
development of
true,
such
Shreya. This
idols
is
and
this is
religion in
very
that.
true. It's a cultural migration from one place to another place, and we can say from rural to urban place. And this is if we talk about Krishnanagar, Krishnanagar is surrounded by many important places or destinations, and one of the most important place is Navadvip. You know, Navadvip was very popular because of its unique culture. It's an amalgamation of various religions, and also a place of Vidya Charcha or study, we can say. The both the images shows the two idols. One is Jognath, it's a Shiva idol, and another one is Buro Shiv. The Bureau Chief was basically established in 1882 by one of the very eminent persons of Navadvip, Krishnakanta Shiromani, who was the member of the first municipality or municipal corporation of Navadvip. And after that, in 1907, that Navaratna, the present Navaratna temple built by the Tara Prasanna Churamani, another eminent personality. The idol is more than 200 years old, and but people say that the temple was built in by Krishnakanta Shiromani, but the idol was older than that time. It is basically 1700 AD. That it, because somehow it's true, because some of the literary work in Sri Sri Gaur Charit Chintamani, which was written in the 1800, and in Bijoy Ramsen Bisharad written another book, that is Tirtha Mongol, it was in 1770. In both these books we saw that the presence of Guru Shiv was there. So Shreya, it shows that before Neo Vaishnavism introduced by Lord Chaitanya Dev, and that Shakto, that Shaivism is also strongly present in Navadvip and as well as the other places of Nadia.
So, Dr. Chakraborty, if you can take a reference of the early religion of that area with how the Durga idols came into being and how did the culture of making idols, came into being through this religious progression.
Basically, during the period of Maharaja Krishna Chandra, and we need to think on this because that was the period when it was full of Shakto movement and Shakto cult. And in Shakto cult in Navadvip, the people they worship the Potochitro or pot, small spots. And after that, with the motivation of Maharaja Krishna Chandra, they have started that Shakto Ras in Navadvip, and the bigger size idols made by clay was started. And Krishna Chandra was also initiated to provide awards based on the ornaments, based on the beauty of the sculpture, and all these things. So it is, when we talk about the how this idol came, it has a long legacy and stories.
So we can correctly say that the modern day, the forefathers of the modern day Durga idol makers are actually the potters of that era in
Yeah,
Krishnanagar.
that yeah. The influence. It's basically acculturation takes place. Different influences takes place, and and it's always the changes are there in different period of time, different dynasty, according to the historical time scale. The changes are there. We saw this is this is the image of a view of Ghurni. The Ghurni is our topic today, and one side that Jalongi River, and the bank of the Jalongi River, the Krishnanagar city. And if we talk about, next slide, please. If we talk about, yeah, as we say that there is a questions, because in this topic there are many questions can come out. So the question is, the earlier name of Krishnanagar was Nodia, Revi, Bollalpur, none of them. Please go
And
through.
for the viewers, please make sure you take a little bit of a, extra effort to answer questions by Dr. Chakraborty. He is not a doctor of medicine, but he is a doctor of social development, folk and folklores. So his questions might be a little critical. Take your time, run through the questions, and listen to his narrative a little carefully.
Next slide, please.
So, just for the viewers again, please choose your correct option and write it down in the chat box with the given question
Yeah,
number,
please.
so that it makes us easier for you, for us
True,
to
true.
understand which question you're answering.
If we talk about Krishnanagar, it's we can say that it is the epicenter, cultural epicenter of Nadia. And since pre and post Chaitanya era, there were many historical events takes place, and it is the birthplace of many eminent personalities. For example, Dijendra Lal Roy, and not only that, there are many other personalities who are from Krishnanagar. Also, Bagajotin also connected with Krishnanagar, and we all know these stories. And the thing is that Dijendra, if we talk about the Dijendra Lal Roy, he's a poet, lyricist, and dramatist, and born in Krishnanagar in 1863. And his contribution towards the freedom movement of India against the British rules, he was played the role of a motivator and built awareness regarding the patriotism. So another important personality, that Kazi Nazrul Islam, was also once upon a time written his famous poem, that Kandari Hushiyar at Krishnanagar, and there is a place called Grace Cottage where he stayed during that time. So, in that point of view, that Krishnanagar is a very, very important place from the cultural aspects. And if we go back little bit, then we should say about Maharaja Krishna Chandra, who was the very eminent personality and king of Krishnanagar. And he started living in a village, and that village is not in the name of Krishnanagar. His original name was Revi, and after that, that they basically they were from Banpur, and their Bhavananda Majumdar, their early ancestors, Bhavananda Majumdar, then Raghav Rai, all are the very eminent personalities, and we all know that Bhavananda Majumdar's also the Bharat Chandra Rai Gunakar, Bharat Chandra's story also connected with Bhavananda Majumdar. So I think Shreya, now you can also tell something about the magical dolls of Ghurni.
Before this, we have a question, Dr. Chakraborty. The
Yeah,
Provincial Conference of Indian National Congress was held in 1926 AD at which place?
four places are there: Krishnanagar Rajbari, Balkhana Palace of Maheshganj, Kasim Bazar Rajbari, none of them.
I'll again repeat, please choose your correct options and post it in the chat box with the given question numbers. And the first ones to post the correct answers will be eligible for the prize. Now, Dr. Chakraborty, you were talking about the Shakto cult or the worship of the Shakti cult. Now, here we can see, as we were both talking about the reference from the craft angle of making Durga idols, and you were also talking about how the Shakto cult was very eminent and prominent during that era. If you could just explain this slide here to the viewers.
Because the thing is, in Krishnanagar and in Raja Maharaja Krishnachandra was a believer of Shaktoka, Shakti, and he was a Shakto. Those who are believer of Shakti, we called him Shakto. And based on that, uh, it was the entire Krishnanagar and Nadia, including Navadvip and surrounding areas. These are basically the influence of Shaktiism was there. And after that, in if we talk about the religion, the different cultural changes in this region, it is basically first Shaivism, then Shakti, then Vaishnavism, and then again that neo Vaishnavism. So these there are four phases basically, because we can say that Chaitanya Dev, pre Chaitanya Dev and post Chaitanya Dev is a very big change, because Chaitanya Dev's influence and Chaitanya Renaissance has a great impact in every aspects, in music, in preparing the different musical instrument, evolution of the Gauriya Vaishnav Nitya. All these things are connected with such kind of influences. Shreya.
Correct. Now, referring to the previous slide, here is your next question. The Jagadhatri Puja of Krishnanagar was started by which of these options? Now, let me explain. Jagadhatri is an incarnation or a roop of goddess Durga. The slide that you had seen right now, just before the question, was of goddess Jagadhatri. I hope you've taken note of the question and also selected your correct answers. So we will just like to move on with the presentation now. Now, we were talking about how the development of clay doll making in Krishnanagar happened. Now, since we're talking specifically about dolls and toys, we would just like to go into a little detail of the special features of these dolls, or what distinguishes these dolls from the rest of the dolls that are found all around Bengal or even India. So, the first distinct feature that comes to mind when we look at one such doll are the postures and the attitudes with which these dolls are represented. Now, if you look at these dolls, there are different kinds of people represented through, these toys or dolls. But if you look closely, these are not just visual representations, these also have almost like an expression of reaching out to the people. The dolls talk to the people about their lives, what these people are doing, like the laborer on your extreme left and the artisan on the extreme right. If you look into the postures and the finesse of the clothes, the muscles, the way their limbs are, how the fingers are working, you will see that these are direct references of the life, the people who are alive. If you look at an artisan who works with thread, who works with needle, if you look at their fingers, how they use their fingers or use their hands, that would be definitely different from somebody who works with a spade or an axe. So in these two dolls, you see the difference in postures, the strength of the laborer, the one who works in the field, and the finesse with which the artisan is actually working. And also the detail of the clothes, the detail of their hair, their, how some dolls are very put together and some dolls are really unkempt, talk about not only the society, not only the financial distinctions between classes of people, but also how certain people belonging to certain occupations present themselves. So, one of the very, very important features of these dolls are the realistic representation of a certain clan and not only a particular character. Again, in this slide, you have three distinct characters. You know, three of them are standing, three of them are, approaching something. But if you see the difference in approach, the man on the extreme left with the man in the center and the man on the extreme right, their roles in society used to be different. This reference has been taken from the older version of the dolls, where people from regular society used to dress this way. So, as you can understand, the one on the extreme right is a Brahmin, the one in the center has some other job, and the one in the extreme left has another job. If you look at their clothes, you will be able to identify the work they do, the kind of hurry that there is on their faces, the kind of postures, even the difference in the muscle tones. If you look at the previous slide, if you look at how the muscles are shown in the standing figure, is extremely different from how this old man, who's a Brahmin, is actually depicted. So it is not like there is a certain structure on which clothes are put and hair is put and a doll is made. Every detail is taken into account, and that is why we like to call these dolls repeatedly anatomically correct. It is not just about the proportions and the calculations of anatomy, it is about individual anatomies of every kind of people, who we can see around us. Same here in the slide. If you look into the portrait of that doll, you see that expression of her daily labor, the toil, the grind that he has to face every day, the grind also that he has to face every day is reflected on his face. Whereas on in the inset, there is a there's a picture of a folk singer who is way more calm. His posture is of a posture of a singer who's trying to express, but his face, his attitude is devoid of that trouble. Whereas on your in the bigger slide, in the bigger image, if you see closely, you see the trouble even in the eyes of the person. So these are very specifically points that make the Krishnanagar dolls, a little different, a little more important socially than the other dolls. We were talking about anatomy and how British schooling had brought in the correct anatomical understanding of human figures. This slide, we're just showing you an image of a hand, hands. If you can see, the overall dolls look like a human being. Of course, we had spoken about muscles, postures, the face. But if you also look at the hand, you see how age is depicted through the veins and through the skin of the hand. Everything is made of clay, I must tell you. But there is, apart from the hair and the clothes that these dolls wear, it is just made of clay. But if you can see the correctness with which the hands of an old person is depicted is always different from how the hands or the legs of a younger person would be depicted. So these intricacies of Krishnanagar dolls make it very special in terms of not only, visual correctness, but also in terms of understanding people, understanding society, understanding the degeneration of a body or the youth or childhood through you know representation of a person's body. So we will come to the next question of the session. What is the special feature of Krishnanagar dolls? I'm sure by now you've understood that you'll have to choose your correct answers and type it down in the chat box with the question number. Do it fast because we will look at the earliest correct answer providers for the prize. Now, we were talking about the anatomical correctness of these dolls, but you also have to know, and we were just talking about how clay is used. We will just make a quick run through the process of these doll making. Krishnanagar, as we have already told you, specializes in making clay dolls. Now, if you can see this slide, a person who's intricately carving into the clay structure and making these the features, developing the features of the doll is something that is very, very regular in Krishnanagar. Firstly, the doll is started off by creating a wire structure on which clay is applied. It is done mainly by the pressed method. Now, recently, certain molds are also being used, but those molds are not for these kinds of dolls. Those molds are for a more stylized development of the doll making. Now, if you look at this picture, you will see that wire frames can be seen. Now, most of the times, the facial features, the body, the limbs are made, by hand, and then it is sun dried. Now, once these things are sun dried, cracks develop, as you can see in the inset. These cracks are traditionally filled with a combination of softened paper and the glue obtained from tamarind seeds. Now, once these cracks are filled up, these things are again sun dried and then baked in the kiln. Once the dolls are baked, fabric is used, jute or cotton is used for hair, and these dolls are then painted. So this is how we get the painted dolls of Krishnanagar. We will not go into too much detail of this, then it becomes a different topic of discussion. But just to give you an idea of how these Krishnanagar dolls are made, till date, we just gave you this section. So of course, there is a question for this section as well. What is used to fill gaps and cracks in a doll? I'm sure you'll get this right because we discussed it right now. Choose your correct answers and please type it down as fast as you can.
Because the subject is very big.
Going into any detail of any kind of art form or craft form, it becomes deeper, because
Yes, yes, yes.
we live in a country which has immense history and
Yes.
there is so many influences.
And
So we
these are all
really need to,
interrelated.
of course, we really need to, find our section of discussion for.
Very true, very true.
So moving on, um, this is where the importance of Krishnanagar dolls will be a little more clearer to you people. We were talking about anatomically correct dolls and dolls that represent the society. But in this following section, we will just discuss what kind of representations happen. You know, I start going into the representations, I would request Dr. Chakraborty to actually explain how the whole idea of representing such varied cultural span came into Krishnanagar.
As I earlier explained, that the role of Lord Chaitanya Dev or Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very, very important because of its great impact. Because the Chaitanya's life, if we discuss that 1486, if we talk about the birth year of Chaitanya Dev, till to 1534 AD, this span of time is the Chaitanya Renaissance. And uh, according to the history, that after 100 years of Lakshman Sen, around 1300 AD, because we should understood that pre-Chaitanya and post-Chaitanya phases of Krishnanagar and surrounding areas. Because what was there earlier before Chaitanya Dev? In Navadvip, because both are interconnected, we can relate like Kolkata and Howrah, we can relate like Bandel and Chuchura kind of thing. Mm, So in that time there was, as I told, that there was Shakti cult, Tantra Sadhana was present. One tantric sannyasi or monk was visited Navadvip, and he founded the one Vigraha, and it's called Purama at Navadvip. It is very well known at Puramatala. So
This is the temple,
it
right?
is the temple, and basically there was three temples. One is Purama, and the right side is the Shiva temple, and the left side there was a Bhavatarini temple. So all these three, it's a complex, we can say, and it represents the unity and the amalgamation of three different phases of religion: Shaivism, then Shakti cult, and the before Shaivism, the Purama, we can say the non-Vedic goddess and all. It's an amalgamation. So, but there was several controversy in Navadvip Mahima, one book, very popular book. According to that book, they not considered the actual year or the establishment history of that Purama. But in one book, they considered that Bihodratha was the name of that monk who was founded in this Purama in Navadvip. And based on that, there was several articles in several journal, one Tara journal in 1316, written by Bhupendra Narayan Roy. He also told us this kind of stories, and we should consider the main two things. One, why Navadvip was famous. One was due to the presence of Chatuspati, and the second one was the Purama. Because uh, why Chatuspati is famous? Because Chatuspati is basically the representation of the Vidya Samaj, or the a very elite community, and it was the place which is very popular for the Nobbo Nyay Shastra, because at that time it was compared with Oxford, India's Oxford,
Yeah.
based on the Nobbo Nyay Shastra. And in that case, that Nobbanai Gaudiya Math establishment in Navadvip, based on by Vasudev Sarvabhauma, who was the teacher of Lord Chaitanya. So these are the very, very important stories that pre-Chaitanya era. These are the important factors or influencers whose impact is basically very important to study or explain the history of the dolls, the history of the other cultural elements of that particular region.
We are, of course, talking about the dolls and the general history of the area. But when people want to visit from the touristic angle, want to visit Krishnanagar or Nodia, what are the historical references that are still present there that people can go back to and look at?
Yeah, see, actually we can compare this Navadvip with Banaras. Because of its unique feature, its narrow lanes, its cultural influences, its several n number of historical, or we can say heritage buildings, different temples, its n number of ghates beside the river Ganges, and its several cultural elements or components. And apart from that, as I told, that Krishnanagar itself is a very important destination, because in Krishnanagar Rajbari itself, it's a very good place to see. It's an heritage building, and in Krishnanagar Rajbari, as I told you that the several political incident also takes place. The national conference of Congress party was happened in that Rajbari, and Sarojini Naidu was present there. With the chairman was in that conference. Chairman was Nirmal Chandra, and in all these things, it was I think in 1926. And the Jagadhatri Puja, we saw that the entire India, because India is incredible. People goes to see the Camel Festival of Pushkar. People goes to Kite Festival of Gujarat, and there are n number of other festivals, Ratha Jatra of Puri. So this is the time that we should tell the story of these festivals like Jagadhatri Puja of Krishnanagar, Ras Jatra of Navadvip, in the Ras Jatra of Shantipur, because Shantipur and Navadvip Ras are both are different, and one Shantipur Ras ends, then Navadvip Ras starts, and those unique features are totally different. So these are the different important areas or destinations. Also, if we talk about the threads or textiles, then Fulia,
Yes.
Kittivas, Fulia was the birthplace of Kittivas Oja. And if we go to the little northern side, then there was a wildlife sanctuary, Bethuadauri Wildlife Sanctuary.
Hmm.
Then from Bethuadauri, then little far, there was Ogrodip. In Ogrodip, there's the Ogrodip fairs are very, very important. And not only that, that Barodol festivals of Krishnanagar, and there are n number of components, tourism related components are there. So we need to explore, and the one day is, and that 1 hour time is very less to explain all these components.
Correct. So the next question for the viewers from this section is: the presence of Pura Ma in Navadvip was, and here are your options.
To answer this question, viewers, please little bit take your time, because I already explained that the three phases of the cultural history of that area.
So we are continuing with the presentation now. Dr. Chakraborty, you were explaining about the rise of Vaishnavism,
Yeah,
and right after Porama, can you just explain the importance of Vaishnavism and how Vaishnavism and the Shakti cults come together and create the whole social structure, which also has immense effect on the dolls that Krishnanagar makes?
yeah, because see, it is basically the cultural. We saw the cultural unity basically in through the Ras of Navadvip, because that Shakto Ras was first started by Maharaja Krishna Chandra, and it was you can say it was an experiment, because it was very rare in India, because Ras was gods from heaven to see the Ras or Leelas of Lord Krishna. This is the main concept of Ras Jatra. And what is the Ras? The concept of Ras is basically it is the reunion between the Jivatma and Paramatma. So these are the reconciliation. These kind of highly philosophical thoughts are there behind the Ras Jatra, and Shakturas is little bit different. And we can say that it is the we can say the symbol of the our three important guns: Sattva, Tamo, and Rajo. Hmm. And these kind of several philosophical things are there. And Vaishnavism is also when revised by Lord Chaitanya, he established that neo Vaishnavism, and the meanings and the applications were changed.
Yeah.
And again, from that, the followers of Lord Chaitanya, there are also several other minor religious sects, and we will explain the story of these minor religious sects after some time. So these are the overall situations in that time, in that Krishnanagar, Navadvip, Shantipur, Pulia, all these areas. Even not only that, that Lord Chaitanya started traveling to many parts in eastern India. He traveled entire district Nadia. We find the several footprints in Chakdaho, in Maheshganj, in Shantipur, in many places. So it's an endless story, we can say.
Now, continuing with the explanations by Dr. Chakraborty, here's your next question. Navadvip was popular for.
Vedanta Shastra, Nabya Nyaya Shastra, Tantra Shastra, none of this.
I think this discussion was done just a while earlier.
Yes, yes,
I'm
yes.
sure people will remember the answer.
And you know that Ras, there are many big idols of Kali, and in its different roops
Yes.
are there. That Alane Kali was the first, and it was basically started by Shankarnath Tarkovagis in Navadvip, and around 1752 AD. And apart from that, there are Bamakali, there are Boroshama, there are other many Bhadrakali. There are different roops or forms of Kali idols are there. In different paras or areas, there is a different uh, idol.
Although we're talking about toys and dolls here, there might be people listening to us who are interested in the history and the social anthropology of this area. So, at the end of the session, if you could suggest some books, if we have students here who are studying such subjects, if there are some books available that they can refer to, that would be great, I think,
Yes, yes,
because
there are
the area that
many.
we're talking about is socially, religion wise, and otherwise very complex and overlapping. So if
Nodia
somebody wants
Kahini,
to,
Nodia Kahini is
understand
there.
it,
Nodia Kahini by Kumodnath Mallik. It was edited book is there. Then if we go through, because all these movements, all these stories are connected with inter-district.
right,
So, from the broader point of view, to know Bengal, we should study some of the very milestone books like Paschim Bange Sanskriti by Binoy Ghosh, like Bangalir Itihas by Nihar Ranjan Roy, Banglar Itihas by Rakhal Das Bandyopadhyay, and in all these books, and Navadvip Mohima, then Chakdaher Itihas or Sanskriti, in all these books, you will find a overall picture of the then the religion, then the Chaitanya movement, Vaishnavism, the Muslim rules, all these things. Also to study the minor religious cult, there is a book by Shashibhushan Dasgupta, Obscure Religious Cult is another book. So these are the landmark work of the great scholars.
right. Now moving on to the discussion of how the representations happened. Dr. Chakraborty explained how the religious icons or the socio-cultural icons were represented and what is the reason for such representations. Now, very quickly, let us just go through the kinds of representations that Ghurni does since its inception. So, Ghurni does not distinguish between religious icons, cultural icons, or different classes of people. It is almost like it is a toy maker's hub who break the divide between the rich and the poor. On the same hand, where they are portraying Mahatma Gandhi as a social icon, they are also portraying the Adivasis or the Santhalis, who are the hunters and gatherer tribes. Of course, right now the tribe is engaged in different occupations, but we're talking about 200 years ago. So the stories that come out paints a complete picture of the society, right from political, religious, social icons to the people who serve the community through different occupations, and also people who help build the society by, you know, creating homes, raising children. So it is not only that a hunter-gatherer or a eminent social personality is always portrayed. We can also see portrayals of women doing household chores and raising children. So it is almost a wholesome narrative of what the society of Bengal was, and in some parts what the society of the larger India was at that time. And as we go through this presentation, you can see that how those representations are changing with the change in the society. So, in the next slide, again, we're talking about people from the tribal belts, the tribal zones of the area, and tribal zones of all over Bengal who have different occupations. So here you can see a person collecting wood, a couple who's collecting wood, and a couple who are a couple of musicians. The man is playing the drums and the woman is a dancer. If you see the reference of how rural India is directly portrayed through these images, this is your reference. I mean, of course, in rural India or even in rural Bengal, certain belts have tribes or communities who live off the forest. They gather wood from the forest, leaves from the forest, they hunt in the forest. And the Krishnanagar doll makers made sure that these communities were not left out. So as you can see, a woman with a load of branches on her head has been correctly represented through these dolls. And again, a different kind of people who are not associated with serving the society directly. They do not engage in any occupation, but these are the people who engage in enlightening the society with knowledge, information, or spread love. These are the bowls. Now, Dr. Chakraborty would be better equipped to talk about the bowls and how the bowl culture existed in that area. But let me give you a little introduction of who the bowls are for the people who don't know. These are bard or minstrels who sing about society, about divine connection, but their divine connection is often not religious. It is a connect of a man to the God directly without religious constraints. So, if Dr. Chakraborty would actually, emphasize on the importance of Baul in that area in connection to, of course, Vaishnavism and the development of different kinds of religious practices.
Yes, yeah, very true. And you know that in Krishnanagar, I mean in the district Nadia, it is not only Baul. There are many such minor religious cults are there, like Sahib Dhoni is there, like Korta Bhaja is there, Fakirs are there, and Bauls are there. So that minor religious cult and the folk religion, we can say it's better. It's the influence of folk religion is also very prominent in that district and especially in Krishnanagar, in and around Krishnanagar. Basically, they are the anthropogenic religious practitioners and in the book of obscure religious cult by Sosibhushan Dasgupta, he also mentioned about the different hidden things of this Sahajya sadhana. And you know what is Sahajya sadhana? That Sahajya, they have an entire system of beliefs and techniques concerning of basically connecting with their bodies. They're the believer that our body is the temple and our minds and souls should be very clear and always full of positive thoughts. And based on these various concepts, they always basically deeply involved with singing and their instrument is every instrument, every words of their songs, all are meaningful, and as a very they conveyed a very greater meanings to the society. And philosophy is connected with universe. Their philosophy is basically connected with universe. They consider their body, their mind with different metaphysical things. And we can say that it's a combination of philosophy of tantric Buddhism, then Sahajiya Vaishnavism, and mystic Islam. It's a combination of all these three religious concepts. So the goal is basically self-realization.
Correct.
The main objective is self-realization. And they told their story through their songs, their instrument, all this. This aktara is also meaningful. Then,
Now,
yeah,
we were talking about the milieu of three different religious concepts in the development of the Baul cult, and we were just talking about the Shakto practices of Krishnanagar. So, if you could just quickly explain this slide,
yeah.
from
See,
what I can
all,
understand, the idols showed here are starkly different.
yeah. It's
So, if
as
you
I
could
told
explain
you
that a little.
that it's very interesting that it's a combination of all. See, in India, in different parts, we always consider nature as God. In some cases, in Sundarban, we consider tiger is our God. In North Bengal, we consider elephant is our God. In Himalaya itself, we consider is God. Mount Kailas is our God. In rivers, we consider rivers are God, especially river Ganges. So the idol of the right side, both the images at the idol of river Ganges, because it is the important thing that Navadvip is located beside the river Hooghly or river Ganges ultimately. So
Name
it
of
is
that branch is Jolongi.
Jolongi. No, Jolongi, it's a confluence.
It's a
It's a
confluence.
confluence of Jolongi and River Hooghly.
Hooghly.
From Krishnanagar, 9 kilometers, if we go to the Navadvip, then there is a place called Swarupganj. And
Hmm.
in that place, there is Jolongi and Hooghly, both are mixed.
Thing there,
And
yes.
yeah, we will clearly differentiate the colors of the water. Jolongi is a little bit blackish in color, and River Ganges is a little bit
Yellow, little
yellow,
yellowish.
yellowish. So the puja or offerings puja to river Ganges through idol is a very uniqueness in the Ras Jatra of Navadvip. I saw in even in Tripura, the people of Tripura, even the indigenous people, they consider all streams, all rivers as river Ganges. And here also I found that several images of river Ganges, small idols, they worship, but the actual rivers are different. So as I told that India is incredible, and it is an endless story to explain all these small miracles. Please.
So, after such a deep explanation of the religious confluence of Navadvip or Nodia, here is your next question. Who started the Shakto Rash festival at Navadvip? Your options are Maharaja Krishna Chandra, Lord Chaitanya Dev, Vasudev Sarvabhaumya, or none of them.
And say why Navadvip is repeatedly came in the picture with Krishnanagar and Ghurni, because you know that due to the presence of several cultural components, and it was the epicenter. And for
Yes,
that reason,
and even the subject that we're discussing today, the dolls, most one of the most prominent influences on these dolls come from Navadvip. Cultural as well as religious iconography of Navadvip is reflected very strongly through these dolls.
very strong.
And if somebody visits Krishnanagar or even Ghurni, that particular area, the people around them also live through that influence even till date. Modernization has happened, occupations have differed, but there is a very strong influence of that cultural concept.
Very true. And
And
even
it
with
has it has deviated from being religious. It has now become a very, very, almost like a cultural structure of that area.
true, true. And if we talk about the idol of Mahaprabhu, uh, Chaitanya Dev in Navadvip, which was basically founded by his wife, Vishnu Priya Devi, and that idol was totally different from the other idols in India. The
Yes,
posture of the posture of his hand is totally different. So these there are many stories.
yes. So again, this is, one
Poramadala.
of the components of such rich religious and cultural milieu in that area, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And this is, I think, the idol of the Porama that you were referring to a little earlier.
Yeah, yeah. But actually, idol will not able to see from here.
Yeah,
It
but
is
this is the
inside
temple
the
that
banyan
houses the
tree.
idol.
Yeah, it is inside that banyan tree. There is a small temple-like structure, very small, but it is a very big old banyan tree is there. And that banyan tree is basically attached with this Purama temple. That banyan tree is attached with that right-hand side Shiva temple, and that banyan tree is attached with that Bhavatarani temple. It's very, very big, and the entire climate and the area is totally very mystic kind of thing.
So this is a
And you will
must visit
find
place if somebody
a
wants to
must
go there,
visit
right?
place. A very good walk tour can possible in that particular place. It's an ideal
Right.
place for walk tour.
Now, again, continuing with the social representations, as we were talking about how different clans and different kinds of people were represented, the different engagements or occupations of a certain community was also represented. Now, this is a group of dancers who come from a community who are probably engaged in some other activities for their livelihood. Now, dancing and music is not necessarily their livelihood, but this is a recreational activity that the community or the tribe does. This is the Jhumur dance. Comes mainly from the tribal belts of Bengal. You see how, apart from the hunting gathering aspect, or apart from wood collection, or laborers, these people have also represented communities. I mean, our artists have also represented communities through their recreational activities, through the cultural aspects that these communities have to offer. So the class divide, or the narration of stories about classes, or clans or castes that are made through these dolls do not only, I repeat, do not only stick to the financial or occupational differences. It is almost like building a narration of what a certain community does, or how a certain community lives its life on the land of Bengal. So the image reference you can see is almost a replica of the toys that are shown on the left. And there is a huge time gap between these two images. The image on the left in the inset is a more recent image of the community, whereas these toys are a little older in timeline. But if you can see, these tribes or these communities have continued with the practice. And so narration is still continuing through these dolls. Of course, like we were talking, that day-to-day lives of women, or day-to-day lives in the market, or a vegetable seller, or not necessarily very distinct communities, but general vegetable seller, a fish seller, a musician, everything is depicted through these dolls. Here, the instrument maker. Dr. Chakraborty was right now talking about how instruments also had a great influence by the Vaishnavite cult. And musical instrument making is also a very important part of that area. So, an instrument maker also comes through as a part of the narrative of that area by the Krishnanagar doll makers.
Yes, yeah, it is very true that the image of that instrument was Srikhol, and it is
Yes,
called that the divine percussion. The actual meaning of Srikhol is the divine
divine
percussion.
profession.
And it is used for kirtan. And
Yeah.
basically, the concept or philosophy behind that clay drum, which is hollow from inside, and it shows the hollowness of life. This is the main philosophy. And Sri basically demonstrating the Lakshmi or Radha.
Hmm.
And what happened that Lord Chaitanya Dev was a part of the Bhakti movement, and during that Bhakti movement in 15th century, he founded that Gaudiya Vaishnavism or Neo
Hmm.
Vaishnavism, as I told, and he popularized the Nam Sankirtan. And
Right.
in case of Nam Sankirtan, that Srikol or the divine percussion is one of the compulsory instrument.
Instruments. So it is very interesting to see how
Very interesting.
every little aspect comes up as a story and as an integral part of, a complete cultural setup.
Yeah, and all these stories are basically very much related or connected with tourism
Of course.
because nowadays tourism is storytelling and
And while
people
we are
can
talking,
experience.
we will just request the viewers to take note of the question here and write down their answers in the chat box if they haven't already. And be a little fast because only the earliest answers will be considered for the prize.
This all are the part of the experiential holidays.
Yes, this slide actually shows the posture of Sri Chaitanya Dev that you were talking about.
Yeah,
And why this slide is a little interesting is if you can see how religious, socio religious, and political icons are equally built as, statues or larger dolls in that area.
yes, all the reformers basically,
All the reformers,
all the
in
reformers.
whichever
Some are.
way,
Hmm.
anybody who has had an influence on the culture, whether it's global, national, or on the local scales, are represented as a part of a larger picture. This is a
Yes,
very interesting image,
very
actually.
interesting and very unique.
Yes. And now we come to a more stylized reference of doll making. Now, this character here represented is actually the character of Gopal Bhan. Now, Gopal Bhan was to Krishna Chandra was what Birbal was to Akbar. He was the court jester, one of the most intelligent and in at times manipulative components of Raja Krishna Chandra's court. And there are innumerable stories, mainly funny anecdotes about Gopal Bhatt. If you're interested, you can actually look up. Now, the dolls that we had seen earlier we were constantly telling you that these are anatomically correct dolls that represent society. But you might ask me that why is this image of Gopal Bhatt so cartoonish? Because recently in Bengal, children are being taught about such historical characters through cartoons. Now, that relation of history and animation and such cartoon-like appearances have all made an impact on the children, and Krishnanagar or Ghurni is also trying to reflect that effect on the society. These are narratives that are not built by Krishnanagar. These are narratives that are built by animation films that the children are receiving today and learning about history, about the social icons of their history. Now, Krishnanagar is also trying to talk about the changes that are coming in the society and how children today or the upcoming generation is looking at history in which format. So this character here is definitely very, very important to Krishnanagar itself and also to the children of Bengal who are trying to understand history through animation. It is not only Gopal Bhatt. If you see the next slide, we have a lineup of such characters which children relate to. You can understand the stark shift from the stylization to understanding to what people see around. The earlier dolls were exact representations of what people saw around them, to the cultural icons that people saw around them, to these cartoon characters that are so prominent that everything, every packaging, right from food packaging to stationery, everything has images of these. So Krishnanagar dolls are also coming in these forms. If you see the whole flow of doll making, if you see the whole aspect of reflection of the social change, the social wave rather, you can understand it through what dolls are being represented by Krishnanagar as on date. And of course, there are not only dolls that are being made. This is purely an economical shift in Krishnanagar, where the artists are using their anatomical skills, the skills of making portraits and structures and figures into creating utility items like pen stands, vases, and things like that. Of course, even today, as you can see in the inset, anatomical dolls are made. These are religious figures, they could be cultural icons and everything, but apart from them, utility items are also coming into the play and getting a bigger market actually. And another very interesting thing, we were just talking about, we started off this presentation by stating the difference between toys and dolls. But there's something that we have to acknowledge in case of Krishnanagar, that apart from human figures, Krishnanagar also invests in making different uh, dolls or toys of different, vegetables, animals. I have one right in front of me. Krishnanagar makes dolls like these. Birds, animals. If you can see, this is almost like the real bird. And this is completely made of clay and wire. So the one on your screen are replicas of vegetables that Krishnanagar has made. And yes, these are made of clay. If we run through the slides, you will see how realistic these vegetables are made to be. Actually, I think Dr. Chakraborty, somewhere Krishnanagar takes pride in their capacity to create, absolutely realistic,
Yeah.
replicas.
Yes, obviously. And you will not able to differentiate which
Actually,
which
when
one
we
is
were
original.
younger, it used to be a joke where somebody would come with to school or to a certain gathering with a clay fruit and ask us to bite it. This was a very inherent joke in Bengal.
Not only that, in the district Notia, in during the marriage, the totto which
Yes,
we send from one house to another, in that time some false such kind of vegetables and fruits from Ghurni also in the
would
list
be
of.
given as a
Yeah,
joke.
yeah.
Yes.
Now it's we can say it's a tradition. There's all these
Yes, it is a
intangible
tradition.
heritage.
If you look at the Karela, the texture is amazing. I mean, from a distance, from few feet, you won't be able to understand whether it's a real Karela. Of course, this is an old piece where
Old,
the
old.
color has chipped
Yeah,
off.
yeah.
Otherwise, freshly made
Otherwise, you'll not able to
models.
differentiate.
Yeah. Now we come to the sweets. This is a platter of sweets. Now Krishnanagar makes vegetables, fruits, and also platters. A very interesting thing that I had, actually my grandmother I think had, was we call it paner bata in Bengal. A whole setup of pan where the supari, the gulkand, and everything is
Yeah, yeah,
kept
yeah.
inside a box. That was one of the specialities of Krishnanagar at one point of time. The
Oh,
way they used to make it was better than what the real thing. And this is a platter of sweets. Now, why sweets? Why sweets are important is Nodia is very big on sweets. One of the
Yes,
best sweets are
we are
produced
all
in Nodia.
we are
Yes,
already in
I
the
think Dr. Chakraborty, yeah,
sweetest parts of India. And why we are sweetest parts of India? Because of this kind of sweets. Because
yes.
every district has different types of sweets.
Hmm.
If we talk about Nadia, yes, Krishnanagar sweets are very, very different because we can say it's a very royal kind of thing. That the most prominent shop is there, that is the Adhar Chandra
Madhur
Das.
Chandra.
1902, he established his shops, and the famous, well-known sweets are the Sorbhaja, Sorpuria, Rakom Borpi, Kheer Puli, all these things. And if we talk about the other parts, say for example the Nikutis of Shantipur, Monoharas of Shantipur, that Kheer Doi of Navadvip, that Langchas of Ranaghat, the Chanat Jilipi of Arongghata. So it's endless. So we can, even from the tourism point of view, we can conduct a very good, nowadays you
Food
know that
tour.
food trail is very important in domestic tourism market, as well as in foreigners are very happy and willing to experience this kind of travel. So we can give a
Correct.
walk tour that to experience the sweets of Krishnanagar and how sweets develop, how the change, the different tastes. Because each sweets are different from the others, even in the same city, even in the same region. So there are many stories. Again,
Right. And of course, fruits.
yeah, this is another important thing because what I believe, this is the image of Gulab Khas, one of the very, very important mango of the district. And in Fulia, in Shantipur, even in Krishnanagar, all these places, there are n number of gardens and orchards, we can say, is available. And there is a small influence of Murshidabad because when Murshid Quli Khan came in 1704 from Dhaka to Murshidabad, and they are very fond of this mango. And in Murshidabad, they have several mango gardens, and the very historically important mangoes are that Kohitur, then Kalapahar, then Chandan Kosa, all these mangoes. Then Mohanbhog and Nawab Pasand, Rani Pasand, Holdemoni, all these mangoes are there. And as Krishnanagar is very close to Murshidabad, all these Murshidabad mangoes are available in Krishnanagar local market. So even nowadays, if you visit the local markets of Krishnanagar and the Dhulia or all these places, you will find very unique mangoes, which is not available in the urban areas of Calcutta or other
Mm.
parts. But the one
Because these
challenge
names
is,
that you say are very alien to city people.
because we can say that these are rare species because these are very costly and economically not always viable. For that reason, the plantation is not possible nowadays. The farmers are easily find out money from the
Other
other
varieties.
mangoes like that Himsagor, Langra, and all these things. But these are the very, because the stories are there in Murshidabad that if the naughty boys, the mother give him one piece of mango, and after taking that mango, he's go for sleep. These kind of mangoes are also available in Murshidabad. So again, from the tourism point of view, we can arrange to visit these mango orchards, the tests of different mango. We can conduct that mango hearts, such kind of many things.
Now, we quickly come to the concluding part of our presentation where we talk about the hub of such doll makers. We were talking about Krishnanagar dolls, but who makes these dolls? This is a very small settlement right beside Krishnanagar town, and beside the river Jolongi, this place is called Ghurni. Now, Ghurni is initially started off as a village. Right now, it is way more developed than a regular Indian village, but still referred to as the Ghurni village. The Ghurni village is complete with just doll makers in and out. So if you enter Ghurni, right from the Ghurni crossing, you would see shops all around you which display, toys and statues like these. And Ghurni is also home to these people. It is not just a business zone. Every shop, every showroom, or every display zone has a huge studio behind it where the workers are constantly working under the supervision of an artist. Now, these artists are not just somebody who makes an idol or makes a toy or a doll. Most of the Ghurni artists either state awardees, national awardees, or have been awarded by the President of India at some point of time. And many of these people also showcase their works throughout the world. So, this is a quintessential picture of what to expect when you actually go to Ghurni, and this is just not one shop. There are small shops, big shops all along the lane. The lane is flanked by shops belonging to every individual household, every individual artist, where such dolls are displayed and are ready for sale. And this inset of Rabindranath Tagore and Swami Vivekananda is a snapshot from the studio, which almost are close to these showrooms, if not right behind the showrooms, where such work is constantly done 24 hours. So if somebody visits Ghurni, you can see people making the dolls, you can buy the dolls, and also can see the kind of variety that is there. We have been able to show you a handful of dolls because of time constraint and also because of multiple other reasons. But the variety that is there, right from the older dolls to the most modern replicas of cartoon characters or references from the society, can be seen in these shops. And in the studio, if you're lucky enough, if you can befriend an artist, you can actually see the works of their forefathers, grandfathers, great grandfathers, and you can actually understand the kind of dolls that were made then. You can also understand the society that existed then and the difference of the similar community, say, a certain flanking tribal community. The dolls that were made then and the dolls that are made now have a huge difference, and the difference has come because due to development, or the community is shifting their base from point A to point B, or they're shifting their lifestyle. So all those changes are captured through these dolls. It is a very interesting journey, it is a very interesting tour, and it is also a little time taking. So it is not just for shopping, it is almost like an educational tour, education about dolls itself, and also about the social structure and the anthropological changes that have come in the community through ages. So this is about Ghurni in nutshell. And okay, so this is supported by another question. Birthplace of Dijendrulal Rai was Shantipur, Nabodip, Krishnanagar, or none of the places. This topic was discussed towards the beginning of the presentation. Please try and recall and write down the correct answers in the chat box.
And Shreya, this is also important that in Guni, that in Krishnanagar that Dijendrulal Roy is the birthplace, and in Guni also that Jogiraj Shamacharan Lai is birthplace. So
Yes.
Krishnanagar, as I told, that there are many important personalities at there. So these are very popular places and culturally important with many personalities.
And since we were talking about, visiting Ghurni, visiting Krishnanagar, Dr. Chakraborty, if you could, we were coming towards the end of the discussion about toys. And since we are also looking at this discussion from a touristic and a more, cultural aspect, if you could just explain the trail or the distance that a person needs to cover in order to reach Ghurni.
Yes, it is hardly 4.4 to 4.5 hours drive from Calcutta to Krishnanagar or Ghurni. And in and around there are many places, as I already told, that Petra Dauri Wildlife Sanctuary, one side, and the western part, that is Navadvip, and from Navadvip also Samudragar, another important place handlooms, and there are
Yes,
that Notungram for another idol, making that wooden doll, mommy doll, and in Shantipur. Then
textiles.
Birnagar is also another important place. There are also terracotta temples are there. So there are many places. And you know why this rural tourism is important? Rural tourism is important because nearly 1 billion of the world's 1.2 billion youth, those who are aged from 15 to 24, resides in developing countries, and many of them are resides in the villages. And according to the sustainable development goal of the UN, United Nations, that there are several goals, and that, for example, that is the sustainable development goal 5 is talking about that gender equality. Then sustainable development goal 2 is talking about that zero hunger. So all these things is possible if we could introduce this rural tourism and we can engage these local people. Because if we introduce this rural tourism, what will happen? Then the tradition, one side, tradition, culture, folklore, heritage, and natural beauty. All these things are the components of this rural tourism. And the important factor or the game changer is the engagement of the people. And what would be the effect? The effect is the socio-economic development. So our aim and objective is to reach and able to generate more scope of socio-economic development through the introduction of rural tourism. And Gurni or such kind of villages are the important places or tourism products which we can connect with these stories.
And also to, such cultural tourism aspects also bring in a direct interaction between the people who create such artifacts, may be it dolls, be it textiles, be it food items, such items where even if somebody gets to know about these things via media, a lot of information is, it goes through a Chinese whisper syndrome. It is always best that we get to know about every aspect of culture from the people themselves. So the
Very true.
exchange of information becomes clearer, the understanding becomes clearer, because then you don't only listen, you also see for yourself the kinds of things that happen.
Yes, then only that engagement of people will possible.
Yes. So your next question for the viewers is: Ghurni is the birthplace of one of the famous yogis of India, and who is he? Lord Chaitanya Dev, Nigamananda Saraswati, Yogi Raj Shamaya Charan Lahiri, or none of them? And as we move towards the end of this presentation, this was the trail that Dr. Chakraborty was talking about. If anybody is interested, you can actually keep a screenshot of this trail and later look into the different areas that this trail covers and plan your tour. And after the trail, here is the next question for you. Qazi Nazrul Islam written his famous poem Kandari Hushyar at Balkhana Palace, Krishnanagar Rajbari, Grace Cottage, none of the places. Now, coming towards the end of this presentation, we will wrap up by actually concentrating on the area as a whole. And as Dr. Chakraborty was explaining, that in and around Krishnanagar, there are many, many places that are historically, culturally, and socially important. So we were talking about the poet Kirtiba Ojha's birthplace. So Kirtiba Ojha is also the person who had, translated our epics in Bengali. And he was a great, great poet who had introduced a different style of literature in Bengal. And this is the tombstone that, kind of I think,
In the
states
memory of.
that this place,
Hmm.
the epitaph that states the presence of Krittiba Shojha in this area during his time. And the inset also talks about the textile of Nudia area. The textile in question is tat. Tat is cotton handloom, which Nodia area is extremely famous for. If anybody, any of the viewers had, followed our previous presentation on textiles of India, we had given a detailed description of how the tat of Shantipur and Phulia in Nodia district, very close to Krishnanagar, are important. Now, culminating with all these information, I think we would like to request our viewers to actually take note of the areas or the art forms that we're talking about. When we want to talk about such art forms through such presentations with reference to different aspects of the area, we want people to actually engage their interests in those zones. It is not because of just a presentation that we present to kill time. It is because there are so many things that are gradually losing its importance in society, things that were once very, very prominently present in the culture, the cultural setup of India. And now, with, of course, globalization and different aspects of interest, these things are losing importance. So it would be very nice if all of you could, make some effort and hold on to these information, hold on to these things by not only reading about them or listening about them, but also looking at these things on a one-to-one basis. Go visit these places, see what these are, about, because we have, India is so huge, it has so many things to offer. It is not possible in one lifetime to look at everything, I agree, but some things are in our control. And especially if you live close to this area, we'll be talking about many more areas in future, but if you live close to the areas that we talk about, if you are intrigued, we would request you to please go and visit these places and experience them for yourselves before the actual decline comes. Because yes, decline will come with time, and that would be the most unfortunate thing. And decline only comes when general people do not take interest and business doesn't flourish, and these people who are engaged in making these things lose interest themselves, and the future generations don't participate. So it is a request to everybody, please participate in keeping such traditions alive.
And
And with that
Sia, I'm,
comes your final question. The birthplace of Kobi Kirtibash Ojha is? Yes, Dr. Chakravorty, you were saying?
yeah, actually, I'm saying that that in the post-COVID period, people week trained of weekend travel is very popular, and
Yes.
these are the places that people can go for weekend tour from
Hmm.
Calcutta or any other nearby towns or cities. Then, because these are all the components of intangible heritage, and this is a part of this rural tourism, cultural tourism, and we are celebrating that 75 years of the Azadi.
Indian independence. Huh?
Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav. So these are, and that Toy Story is a very, very important in from the both side. One, it will help to conserve, popularize this kind of thing, and on the other side, it will help in the tourism. That
And
these stories are.
especially in case of children who hardly know about these things, about their own country. So azadi would also mean that giving them azadi to understand every aspect of where
Very
they are
true.
growing up,
Very
you
true.
know, because there are so many influences. We live in the world of internet today. Information is unbarred. So if we need to concentrate on a certain information, I also think we should have to channel that in a proper way and get our children to understand certain aspects, whether they follow it in their later lives or not, it entirely on them. But I think we also have to take that initiative to introduce them to these small, aspects of our culture. And I'm not talking about only of Bengal, I'm talking about the whole of India.
As a whole.
Everybody takes a little initiative to introduce their children to their cultural aspects of their zone, it would be, I think, a better life. So we come to the end of this discussion. We end with not a doll, but the textile that we were talking about a while back, just to give you an idea that even though if we talk about a certain aspect of culture, a certain aspect of craft, particular zones in India are full of different such aspects and different such components that can actually create a complete tourism trail if you're interested. Because, of course, you would not come, cross states or cross districts to come and see a couple of dolls, where these dolls are available in showrooms, even in cities. But of course, if you want to take a wholesome experience of the place, be it textile, be it dolls, be it the religious aspects, like Dr. Chakraborty explained, it would be great if you personally take this initiative, have weekends, because Ghurni or Krishnanagar, that zone is almost like a day tour. If you can stay back at night, it would be better, but you can at least cover a small zone during the day. There are
Sorry, sir, I'm
caves by.
interrupting you. That there are
Yes.
places that Balkhana Palace in Maheshganj is a very good place to stay. You can experience the Jomindar Bari or Rajbari kind of thing.
Hmm.
And apart from that, one can, those who are visiting Murshidabad, they can also stay in a
Hmm.
very good palace in Kasim Bazar, Rajbari, or that Barekoti,
Badi
and
Koti.
so many other accommodations are there. From Murshidabad also they can come to Ghurni or Krishnanagar, and they can return back to Murshidabad. So these are the,
even
and we
even
know
college going students, if you want to have a day out with your friends, and of course if you're interested in such things, you can do
many
a day
many
visit
many
here.
many
You can do
permutation
a trail,
combination can
a cultural
possible.
trail. So, with this, we end our presentations. If you like this presentation, please visit our Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram pages and follow them. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We plan to come to you with more such information on more such zones, concepts, ideas, and more such traditional aspects of India. Uh, we will let you know about when our next session is. Till then, we hope everybody takes the initiative to actually go and visit one such place around you. Not necessarily the place we are talking about, but anything that you might be interested in, or your friends or your family might be interested in. Go take a look, interact with the people directly, and see for yourself the kind of resources we have, resources that are still alive in India, resources that might not be alive if we do not take active interest.
And
So, with
thanks,
the
thanks
hope that.
goes to Shreya, thanks goes to the India Tourism Kolkata office, that Ministry of Tourism, Government of India, to give us opportunity to organize such kind of a story, to
This
convey
is a
this
very good opportunity
unfolded
to
story.
actually talk about these things. Especially to a larger audience, it is also a great honor to actually talk about these things. So, on behalf of the Ministry of Tourism, we hope that you take active interest. Till our next session, good night.
Good night. Namaskar.